The other question though that I was going to ask you following on from that is we all know there's such a focus on greenhouse emissions, like we've covered that the last few weeks, but why do you think something like this, now that the planet is getting little to no coverage in the media and in the news?
Because it doesn't line up with their doomsday theory. Sorry. The media and government, they always need an enemy. During war, you've got an enemy. During peace, you've got to make an enemy. So in the 50s, 60s, up to the 80s, early 90s, it was a Cold War. Russia, China, Russia. Communism was the enemy. It's interesting that how quickly that communism went from being the enemy to being the solution. You know, I don't know how that turned so quickly, but hey, it did. During the Cold War, you've also got to remember a lot of our media outlets were supporting the other side. The New York Times lashed praise on Stalin and Lenin and Mussolini. So a lot of our major publications around the world actually praised communism all the way. So when you think about it, you know, when the enemy dies, they resurrect it because they've always wanted it. So they've resurrected it as the solution. So we now live, even though there are skirmishes around the world, we've had Iraq, we've had 9/11, we've had all this stuff that's happened around the world. That was to create an enemy. Osama bin Laden, Iraq. What was his name in Iraq? God. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. But all these guys were the enemy, so we had to go bomb them. Saddam Hussein. Thanks, Aiden. Saddam Hussein was the enemy, right? Gaddafi was the enemy. The Taliban in Afghanistan were the enemy. There was always had to have an enemy. Now, a lot of that, the people are getting sick and tired of sending their kids to die for a war that's not fought on their soil, for anything that has anything benefit to do with their country, right? So the politicians are going, we need a new enemy. We've got one. We've been fighting this since the 70s, since the 60s. Global warming, climate change, global cooling, global heating. It's had about 20 different names. We'll call it climate change, the big baddie. That's our new enemy. And to fight this enemy, we've got to become communist. So they get two wins. They get the win of communism, the elites versus the paupers, and they get to fight their enemy, which destroys the economy, which keeps them in power. That is pretty much the basics of how politics works. Because people can't live in peace. It's an impossibility. We have a thing called a mind, and some people's minds are more evil than others. So they're always looking for an enemy. Forever in a day, there's an enemy. Have a look back at the 16, 1700s during the height of the piracy. The free privateers were the enemy because the contracted privateers, who were just pirates, they were still raiding ships, doing the same thing as the free pirates, weren't giving taxes back to the government. So they were the enemy. But the government was doing the same thing. And we all know, do not compete with the government, because they'll outdo you. You know, and that's why we have laws and that sort of stuff, so government becomes best. So that's why this report, which doesn't line up with the enemy, because the enemy is carbon dioxide is bad, it's making the world hotter, it's making everything more desertification, more storms, more this. This report tells us totally the evidence, so quick bury it. Meanwhile, you'll probably never, ever hear from that committee again because they published a report that was against what was going on. Now, just while we're on this subject, there is a website, what's it called? My World 2030. It is a survey website. I think it's My World 2030. My World 2030. It's the UN, My World 2030 UN survey. myworld2030.org. Right? It is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They did one in 2015, and the UN Sustainable Developing Model and what was put out around the world was based on that survey of 9.7 million people. I say to everyone, go and do this survey, but make sure that you put climate change, equality, and all. You don't tick any of those. You tick all the ones around that are going to make the planet better. Better education, better, no poor people, better sanitation, and all that. And then never tick the environment and the global crap ones, because the Davos folks and the UN will use this survey and go, look, the people have said climate change is the biggest problem. In 2015, when this survey was done, or 2014, when this survey was done and released in 2015, climate change was the last. The top ones, the top goals that everyone wanted to see happen was better education, better health, less starving people, less poor people. What they're trying to make this survey into is the other way around. They're trying to flip it on its head. That people, all they care about is climate change, equality, gender fluidity, and that sort of stuff. So go, if we're gonna try and buck the system, everyone needs to go onto these type of surveys and turn it on the head. Right. So that's if you want to do a good deed tonight, go and do that.